What if the reason you're exhausted isn't just your workload, but the invisible emotional overtime you're working every night? In this conversation, psychologist Guy Winch and I unpack why burnout isn't a personal failure, why your mind keeps dragging you back into stress after work is over, and how emotional health, not grit or grind, is the missing skill no one ever taught us. Enjoy the show. Welcome to Make It a Great One with Dr. Dan. I'm Dan Peters, psychologist and leadership coach. This show is all about bringing hope, connection, awareness, and wisdom through meaningful conversations that inspire us to be better versions of ourselves and have a positive impact on humanity. This is your space to pause, reflect, and reconnect with who you are, what you care about, and who you want to be. We have this moment, this day, and this life. Let's make it a great one. Today's guest is all about helping your life be a great one. Today I'm speaking with Guy Winch. Guy is an internationally renowned psychologist who advocates for integrating the science of emotional health into our daily lives. His science-based self-help books have been translated into 30 languages, and his 3 viral TED Talks have garnered over 35 million views. He advises startups in the mental health space, worked with the US and UK governments, and has created emotional health programs for Fortune 500 companies. His work is extensive. It's been featured in the New York Times, Wall Street Journal, the Boston Globe, CNN, Time, Psychology Today, and many more. He is also the co-host of the Ambie-nominated podcast, Dear Therapists. And finally, he has a new book for us, Mind Over Grind: How to Break Free When Work Hijacks Your Life. Guy lives and maintains a private practice in Manhattan. Guy, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
Okay. Lots of places to start. But we're starting here. You are a twin. You are a psychologist. Your twin brother is a psychologist. And from what I can tell, you guys started thinking about this a long time ago. So I'm wondering what the story was for this path for you both.
Yeah, we're identical twins, and we found our way to psychology quite early. We were both interested in it. When we were applying to universities, we decided, let's not talk about where we want to go and what we want to do, because let's not influence one another, because really let's make independent decisions. And we both kind of disappeared into our rooms, reflected, came out, and showed the other person what we chose, and it both said psychology. So that didn't work. Or it did work, depending.
It did work, right? Yes.
Depending on your perspective. But yeah, because we see the world very similarly. We're very similar. We see the world very similarly. We talk about things, and we have a similar understanding of things. So, and we've always been closer. We've always fostered that, and so it kind of just led us down these paths. Now, today he does more organizational psychology.
Mm-hmm.
He runs a company. I'm more of a clinician, but even when we speak and about different things, he's working with companies, he's consulting with the police force, or whatever it is. Just the thinking very similar.
Mm-hmm. The other commonality that I saw in preparation is the impact. I mean, you're a psychologist. I'm a psychologist. There's lots of different types of psychologists. He's gone towards organizational psychology, and what I saw from his work has had tremendous impact on people. And you do it in different ways, and yet both of your work has had a cascading effect. So I am curious about that part of you guys, this like the push and for the purpose and for the impact, because they're large.
Yeah, my brother's he's inspires me every day. He started a company that sought to hire people with severe disabilities who've never worked before, never been able to be in the workforce before. and train them and manage them in a way that allows them to come back to full productivity. And he had to invent an entire managerial model to suit the demands and really the emotional demands. I mean, this whole philosophy was, why this doesn't work is people with severe disabilities, they're given physical adaptations, but they've been marginalized, many of them in society. They've experienced rejection, you know, back and forth. They need emotional adaptations as well. And so, he has a woman who's had horrible sexual abuse. She doesn't feel comfortable sitting next to men. All right, let's then organize things so that you can be shoulder to shoulder among women if that's what you need. Now, again, that's what he did, and then she becomes more comfortable and is able to integrate more. But he was willing to go that extra mile to really consider what the person needs. And so he's done amazing work. His company has been visited by people from 70 companies. He's been written up by the UN. He's even he has a TED talk. And he has a book himself called Winning with Underdogs. So he's truly an inspiration. I could talk about him. Spend the entire interview talking
Yeah.
about him.
A proud brother, a very proud brother.
Yeah.
Well, when I think of impact and watching your TED Talks, there's passion in there, and I noted in a few different ones. One of them was about the battle, right? The battle over recovering from a broken heart, and then another one was about you are going to war. And what I got from them is this passion of like, you have to want this. This is not easy. You have to want this. You are going to battle with aspects of yourself so you can overcome. And I'm curious about, I mean, not as the language, yes, but what has been your experience behind that language to have to really compel people in your work to look at it in that sort of way to make these profound changes?
Well, look, doing things in an emotionally healthy way requires us to disengage the autopilot a lot of times and do the absolute opposite of what we feel like doing in the moment, of what comes naturally to do in the moment, of what maybe our instinct is telling us to do in the moment. It's actually hard work. And by hard, I don't mean laborious, I mean emotionally uncomfortable. And I believe you have to set expectations for that.
Mm-hmm.
And not let people think that, oh, you just close your eyes and manifest and the world will open toward you. No, it won't. You have to work really hard on
Mm-hmm.
figuring out what you're doing to self-sabotage, how you're blocking yourself, how you're, letting yourself indulge impulses that are really bad for you, and how actually difficult it is to
Mm-hmm.
not indulge them, to resist them. The heartbreak thing, our instinct is, when we're heartbroken, it's as if, we're kind of withdrawing from that person, like an addict would from a drug. So, of course, we want to reach out in every possible moment. And we're smart. We can find so many reasons to justify why just one text, because actually, wasn't their cousin going to that event? I should check to see how that was for their cousin. Like, we can come up with, rubbish excuses of why we should reach out and get one more fix for that person, even though that's not doing us any good. To resist that is difficult. And
Mm-hmm.
so, I have that line in the talk which you referred to, which says, like, getting over heartbreak is not a journey. It's not this pretty thing. It's a fight. And you have to fight
Mm-hmm.
it all the time, every day at the beginning, every minute. So
Mm-hmm.
let's set the expectations. You want to heal, it is work. I give the analogy, like if you have a bad physical injury, I don't know if you've ever been in physical therapy, I've been in a bunch. It is painful. It is uncomfortable. It is time consuming. That's how you heal physically. We take that for granted. Well, it's very similar.
Mm-hmm. Through lines that I see in your work is responsibility taking,
Mhm.
which is and pointing to the reality, whether it's a heartbreak completely out of your control. Make up whatever story, like listen to the story they told you why they broke up with you, or make one up on your own, and then just go with it, and then like move forward. And then in your latest work about mind over grind in the workplace, it's like the workplace. environments in many ways are very toxic and stressful and harmful. And whether you stay or go, you need to take responsibility. There are things you can do to take responsibility for your own health, regardless of circumstance.
Right. There are things you actually need to be aware of because, in the case of the workplace, it is impacting you and those around you in ways you're not aware of. Some research shows, for example, that if you're very, very stressed and pressured at work over time, your partner will start to develop symptoms of burnout. In other words, and you might think, "Oh no, I'm not transferring that. I'm keeping that in the office. I'm shedding it at the door." No, you're not. It's very, very difficult to. You can't be in a very stressful work environment and switch that mindset on a dime. You've been activated all day. You're in fight or flight. You're watching out for the tensions in this meeting and the politics and the backstabbing and whatever the thing is and the demands and the difficult boss. And you think that's a battlefield. You can't, no one steps off the battlefield and is like, okay, well, now I'm fine.
Mm-hmm.
No, there's work you need to do to get to fine. You can, but it doesn't happen automatically. It needs to be intentional. It needs to be deliberate. It needs to be mindful. And it's like that. In other words, part of why we see so much stress and burnout in the workplace is that we are trying to address it at work when it's not contained to work. We do bring it home with us, and it infects all these areas of our lives. And unless we address it there as well, it's not going to get better. But it can if we actually look at all the ways in which it's impacting us.
Well, and you make the argument. I don't know if this is farther or that a lot of work stress happens outside of the workplace, where like there is a certain kind in the workplace, but you're also in it and you're working, and it's not until we leave it when it really starts to take its toll on all aspects of our life.
Exactly, because it's when you leave it that you start to process the events of the day. Usually you're just too busy. You're going from task to task, from meeting to meeting, whatever the thing is. You're just head down, getting through it. And then when you commute home, or you get home, or you're sitting at home, that's when the upsetting, the distressing, the tense, the uncomfortable, the unfair, the different things that happen start to play out in your head, and you start to process them. And that's when you start to experience the stress, because when you're very, very busy, you're just then getting through. You're not pausing to self-reflect. You're not processing. And that often happens at home, not necessarily in the most adaptive ways, but it does. And so people can spend an entire evening, replaying an argument they had with a coworker and fantasizing about, I could have said this, I would have said that. What if I had said this? Oh, I wish I would have done this. It's done. You've had the discussion. What are you doing? You're just reactivating the distress. The argument was upsetting for the 10 minutes in which it happened. You just spent 3 hours replaying that and upsetting yourself for 3 hours voluntarily. For what? What did you get out of it? It's not useful, but it's very automatic. And it's the kind, and it'll ruin your evening. Your family can tell you're checked out. You're flooding yourself with cortisol. You're not allowing your physiology a time to set and reset, which it needs to after that level of stress and pressure from the workday. And it doesn't occur to us that we actually don't have to indulge those kinds of thoughts when they occur to us. And they will occur to us, and we will think about it. But if you're aware, but that's not actually healthy. That's actually damaging, and I'm doing all this unpaid overtime. Why would I do that? If you start to think about it in reasonable ways and know how to unwind that, then you can actually say no to it. You can actually, take responsibility for yourself and realize I don't need to let my mind lead me into these dark corners and down these rabbit holes. I can actually pull back and say, no, 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 no. That's not so good. That's not how I want to spend my evening.
We're going to move towards rumination, which you just talked about without naming it.
Yeah,
and
correct.
before we do, I was reliving a shared experience with you. You were in New York City, and I was in Northern California. Who knows? Maybe similar times, but after a long journey of getting the degree, getting the doctorate degree, getting the license, with the dream of being in the private practice, in even the kind of building that I imagined myself in, full-time private practice, I found myself how did I get here? Why do I feel like that? What was
Mm-hmm.
all this about, right? The burnout,
Mm-hmm.
the
Yeah.
ruminating, the questioning. It makes sense on paper. It didn't make sense inside. And so I had my own. I appreciated you saying that. And and then the ruminating, it starts, right? It just starts. We're thinking about our clients, then we're thinking about ourselves, thinking about our clients, and then and more and more and more and more, and you realize you are working full time, overtime, and it gets and not sleeping because the rumination continues
Right.
throughout the night.
Right. Right. First, I'm sorry you had that experience. As you know, I had it as well, and it's really scary because you have to devote truly all your adult life to get there. Right. You're starting from high school and then college and graduate school, what have you, and then you're there and you're like, oh, I'm not happy. Was that a mistake?
Hmm.
And when you're burnt out, you can't tell because when you're burnt out, you're numb. You can't enjoy what you do, whatever joy it was giving you, whatever meaning and satisfaction becomes, like a concept, but not a lived experience. Because, when you're burnt out, to manage that, you just numb. You just feel jaded, you feel, exhausted, like nothing is registering, really. And for me, it was a panic, like, oh goodness, did I just do all of that
Hmm.
by mistake? And by the way, this was a passion since I was a kid. As we said earlier, if not this, then what? And it's only when I was able to recover from the burnout that I was able to reconnect. Oh, actually, I love this. But it was so far away from me, that love. It was there the whole time, but I just was numb to it. It's like a depression, in that way. You just are flat. Nothing has meaning or joy or satisfaction. So, yeah, it's a very scary place to
Hmm.
be, burnout, because you're questioning everything. Well, why am I doing it? What am I doing? What's the point?
Hmm. Well, and I guess there's a fork in the road here because I do rumination comes in, and you had to get yourself out of it
Mhm.
through science-backed ways, and you teach others. So there's that track, and the other track is for so many people who feel burned out is what to do about feeling burnt out. Because as you point out, I mean, it's a very scary and it's an awful place to be because you don't have your energy. You're questioning everything. We often question ourselves, not
Mhm.
only about our meaning, but about our own competency. That the
Of
fraud
course.
comes in. So take that where you will.
Uh, okay, I'll comment on the burnout. No, I do want to go to the rumination because I think there's some practical things there that are useful. But with the burnout, look, the first order of business is to recover from the burnout. I mean, when you feel that like that, you have to label it for what it is, and you have to realize that you need to make a change right now because you don't recover from burnout overnight or over the weekend. You really need to make some fundamental changes, not just in how you're working, but how you're living outside of work. How much of a life you have outside of work, how much you've allowed work to take over, how chronic the stress has become, how little you've had breaks from it. There's a part in the book I talk about like how we get caught up in the demands of work and slowly amputate aspects of our personalities and our identities, like one by one, until we become these narrow people because I don't have time for this friend and I don't have time for that pursuit. And I used to like reading about this, but who has the time to read about that? And slowly everything that defined us outside of work gets marginalized. And then we're truly drones. Then we're truly just like, and then, and of course, people, with children who are caretaking. So they finish one duty, have to begin another. And then if there's no space for themselves there, if there's no place for them to be a person, an individual, to connect with those, unique aspects of themselves, the stuff that made them feel like them, then burnout will happen. So, first order of business is you have to recover from that. You have to make the changes. You have to, um, you know, find ways to, to connect to aspects of your personal life, to reconnect to things that used to matter, to people that used to matter, to change how you're working. And people say, well, I can't change how I'm working. And I remember during COVID, people would say to me that I can't afford to get sick a single day. The company would collapse if I cut back by 10%. Then they would get COVID and cut back by 2 weeks. And guess what? Nothing collapsed. Yes, there were gaps to fill and some things didn't get done, but we always overestimate how vital we
Mm-hmm.
are. No, you have to do something. That's an emergency situation. You can't just keep going when you're and then when you start to recover, then you can assess, but you can't assess when you're burnt out. You know, that's not a time you can assess whether you're doing the right thing in the right way. Like first recover from the burnout because
Mm-hmm.
nothing
Mm-hmm.
will be accurate.
Actually, so let me just jump in here because you're making me remember something
Hmm.
that I learned at graduate school and it stuck with me, which is don't make a major life decision while you're depressed, right? Because
Hmm.
we don't
Hmm.
have all the data. We don't have all of our capacity.
You don't have the emotional
We
data.
don't have
Is what you don't
exactly.
have. You don't
And
have
so,
touch.
would you
You're not in
say?
touch with that.
Are you saying similarly burnout? Same.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And for the same reason, you don't have the emotional data.
Mm-hmm.
You're numb. You're flat. It's just all.
Mm-hmm.
So you can't. You know, it's like you can't decide what kind of ice cream you want when you're nauseous because none of them are going to seem appealing. Um, and I want to go to the rumination. The rumination. I, to define it for your listeners, I'm not sure how familiar they are with the term, but just very briefly, ruminating in the context to which I refer in these examples is when we're just replaying upsetting events of the day. We're not processing them in some kind of sophisticated way, trying to understand them, have takeaways from them. We're just replaying them. Like I said, we're just like fantasizing about the argument or imagining that moment where we found out that the other person got the promotion and we didn't, and how unfair it is. And then we start, I call it rumination surfing. Like based on and on all the other unfair things that happened at work and all the other ways the boss was unfair to me, and then they were unfair in this way and that review of your golden moments of horror and disappointment at work is completely unproductive. I mean, it's very depressing. It's very activating. It's depressing. It's aggravating. It's annoying. It makes you feel resentful. It doesn't actually provide you with any value. But those are the rabbit holes we get sucked down, and those are the ones we have to really try and resist. So rumination, it will impair your sleep. As you said, it will make us eat unhealthy foods. It will ruin our mood. It'll check us out, and people can tell we're not present, and over time, it can predispose us to cardiovascular disease. Um, so we really have to take that seriously. People say, "Well, how do I know if I'm ruminating versus if I'm just thinking?" Like, well, if you're ruminating, you're literally pressing on an emotional wound. You are feeling that whatever the feelings were that you had when the upsetting thing happened. That's what you're feeling. It's very visceral. You feel ugh. You feel it stress. You feel the upset. You feel the resentment. You feel the
Guilt.
anger, the
Yeah.
frustration. When you're actually processing in a useful way, you're problem solving. You're trying to understand something. You're in your head. You're not in your body, and that pursuit eases stress and distress because you're trying to figure it out. And the minute we figure something out, oh, you know what? Yeah, the boss yelled at me because I keep suggesting this thing that he's already said he doesn't really love. I mean, I think it's great, but I really keep forgetting that it's not his thing and he thinks I'm ignoring him. And that's why he got really upset because 3 times already he said that he's not into that. And I keep thinking of another angle in which that might work, which I still believe is true, but I'm clearly stepping on his toes there and he's feeling disrespected. Lesson learned. It will ease the upset you feel because you figured it out or something about it. And so rumination is something we could spend hours doing. All the
Mm-hmm.
extra unpaid overtime that's unproductive and damaging. And we need to, A, recognize it, B, resist it, and C, lessen the urge to do it by converting that ruminative thought into one that's has a question behind it, a problem solving one. Do I need to take action? And if so, of what kind to what end? Once we're
Mm-hmm.
on that path, then we're thinking productively. And then the urge to ruminate will diminish, and then we'll actually have some good takeaways that we can actually use. Then we can re-engage in whatever it is we were doing.
And when you talk about going through that period of your life, you found success in distraction, right? A lot of people think so. Distraction is a very useful technique in this situation because you're actually you're actually moving your brain away into something else, changing the tracks, and then training yourself to have this skill that when you notice as you say, become aware that you are ruminating, you now have, I can go into problem solving mode. I can go into critical thinking. I can learn something, or I can just go do something completely different and think about something else. Maybe something that brings me joy and interest, or a hobby, or read, but get off of this track.
Well, actually, reading can be tricky because the thing is, the urge to ruminate is compelling. So the distraction needs to be something that takes up so much bandwidth mentally that you don't have enough left over for
Mm,
that ruminative thought to intrude. And with reading, it's not. It's sometimes, depending on what you're reading, can be very engaging, and you can get absorbed, but you might not. So things like memory tasks, like there are all kinds. Like what was the order of song on that playlist?
mm,
What do I have in my fridge right now on the top shelf? Who are the people I sat next to in elementary school? Whatever the thing is, like state capitals, counting backwards by sevens from 104, 103, whatever. Anything like that is when you actually have to concentrate 2 or 3 minutes, and it's a bit of like a reset with an etch a sketch. You're doing a little shake to your brain over there, and it allows because the ruminative urge comes in a wave,
mhm,
like a craving, and so if you just kind of see it through the wave, it doesn't persist, then you can re-engage. Now,
mhm,
if the urge to ruminate is strong, you might have to do that again 5 minutes later. But a few times like that, and really then trying to focus in whatever it is you are doing, can really help.
mhm. I want to weave in another one of your principles into this, which is your focus on emotional health versus mental health. The distinction you make between mental health being something that is often diagnosable, depression or anxiety,
Right.
which is why we need to focus on our emotional health to build our resilience, build our health, our self care to prevent a mental health diagnosis. So I'm curious about your thoughts on rumination, because we know that rumination is very common with depression, a ruminative
Mm-hmm.
depression. It's very common with anxiety, a worry that's over, or an
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
obsessiveness. Um, and yet, I imagine I see people as being it falls in the emotional health in the beginning for those who are not dealing with the clinical issue, and it
Mm-hmm.
could easily topple over. So we're trying to catch it before it actually becomes
Mm-hmm.
clinical.
That's exactly right. I mean, to me, the distinction is that emotional health is the suffering that we have before something becomes diagnosable, but it's suffering. It's the stuff that, I mean, anxiety, you can be quite anxious without reaching the criteria for an anxiety disorder. It's really unpleasant, and you still need to know how to manage
Hmm.
anxiety in those
Hmm.
situations, what you can do when you're feeling anxious, how to decatastrophize, how to regain a sense of control, how to be, just address it in a more productive way. The same with depression. Our thoughts tend to be very pessimistic, very dark, and very ruminative. We tend to kind of, it's like this event horizon of bad feeling that we tend to circle around and around and around. It's much harder to break free of it once you're depressed, because by definition, when you're depressed, your emotional resources and your mental resources are all compromised. But it's a habit that we get into way before depression actually hits a certain threshold, and that's where you want to do the battle. Because I, for example, have trained myself to. I mean, in stressful periods, I'll still ruminate, and I'll get the invasive thoughts, right? I'll get the intruding thought. I just will catch it very quickly, and I won't go down the rabbit hole. I've developed a true antipathy for it, practically a disgust. I feel annoyed, if I'm
Hmm.
ruminating about somebody that did something that I literally said to myself, I don't want that person in my head, and I don't want them in my home, and I don't want them in my evening, and I'm like, ugh, get out. I mean, I literally have that thought, like, get out. I'm not doing that. I mean, it's literally, I'll shake my head. No, 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 no. No, I'm not doing that. And then I'll use distraction. I'll do it. But I catch it quickly, and I've developed a real disdain for it. And there's a resistance I have
Hmm.
to indulging it. So that's very, very, I mean, it's good resilience, right? Because it prevents me from going down the rabbit holes. And once you do, they do self-reinforce. You do get lost in them. The habit becomes, stronger. So it's very useful. You want to do that battle, and you want to win it. And again, mental discipline required
Mm-hmm.
here.
Yeah.
But it's really worth winning because it really
Oh,
is quite
terrible.
preventative.
It's terrible. Yeah. I mean, the ruminative process, it's terrible for
Yeah,
any of us who have gone through it. And again, you're using the word very consciously, battle.
it
And,
is.
and rumination is a formative adversary. I mean, it
It
comes
is.
and comes and comes.
It is.
Yeah.
And that's why I add the thing, that piece of developing the antipathy and the disdain,
Mm-hmm.
because that will make you more sensitive to it, so you'll catch it quicker, and more reactive to it. So you'll have that visceral sense of, ugh, I don't want it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'm interested on this. So on actually, I was just listening to a prior episode that's going to be launched, and um, the person I was talking to is from. It was actually also anti-anxiety, but from a yoga mindfulness perspective.
Hmm.
And um, the conversation got me to think of something that a former psychologist of mine once told me when I was having I was in this ruminative depressive cycle.
Hmm.
And I was telling him about, getting ready in the morning and looking in the mirror and all the negative ruminative thoughts that was turned on me. And he said, well, what I'd like you to do is I'd like you to, next time that happens, is notice them and just say, interesting, I'm thinking about these right now. And I had the opportunity not long after to do that. And I there found some initial relief because it wasn't that they weren't coming back, but it was because I wasn't then tackling them and fighting with the content of them. And so what you made me think about, it was like a different version of perhaps disdain or apathy, more like, hmm, and kind of like just let it go, as opposed to, I always think of kind of like that image of King Kong on the Empire State Building, just like battling our thoughts when we're having these ruminative, anxious, or depressive thoughts. And so just thoughts of how you would compare and contrast that.
It's interesting, right? Because this is the principle that mindfulness meditation operates by. The idea is that when you're trying to focus on the breath work, thoughts will occur to you, and you note them. Oh, having a thought about this. But the idea is note in a very kind of evaluative way, uh, having a thought about this, and then refocus on the breath work. So you're kind of training yourself to recenter your focus and bring back your attention to the thing that you're trying to focus on, and be very non-reactive emotionally to whatever comes into your mind. It can be the most alarming thing, and it's not like, oh, I had a thought that I'm going to die in an accident tomorrow. Like, oh, I had a anxious thought. Period. Move it out.
Mm-hmm.
Labeling things in that way, in a very nonchalant, practically way, and doing it in a way that you're not emotionally reactive to it. Just like, oh, interesting. I'm having a thought. Curious, interesting. Curious, interesting are head things. They're thoughts that take us away again from our
Mm-hmm.
visceral, physical responses in our body. So just noting it. If you do that, and again, you have to do it. One observation in the mirror ain't gonna do much. You
Nope.
got to do it a lot, and you
Yes.
don't necessarily have to stand in the mirror either. You just have to respond in that way. The power of doing it in the mirror is it focuses you on you're actually doing it. You're saying it to yourself. It's kind of like deepening the message. Um, but you can't be standing by a mirror all day. So you have to do it when you're not
Mm-hmm.
adjacent to one. But it's the same principle. It's
Yeah.
it's it's training yourself to react in a non-emotional way and to kind of almost like reframe a provocative thought into a non-important one.
Mm-hmm. And again, consistent with what we are talking about, what you were talking about, is choosing an intentional counter practice to something that is unhealthy and repetitive.
Hmm. Yes, you have to retrain your mind.
Mm-hmm. So, among the many gems in your book is the only thing to stress about is stress itself. Let's talk a little bit about stress.
Well, look, stress is very, very psychological. The extent to which we feel stress is how we perceive the thing, how we frame the thing to ourselves, how we frame our ability to deal or manage the thing. That's what determines stress. Our stress tolerance is also very elastic. We can expand it by exposure. We can expand it for certain kinds of stresses by exposure and to new ones by experience. So we have a lot of wriggle room when it comes to stress. We're not these captive innocents that are just like, oh, it's buffering us and we have to stand there and get, thrown around by it. But we forget how psychological it is. And one of the exercises I have in the book is, and this emerged from, I would give, talks to companies and sometimes the companies really were known to be like, oh, pressure cookers, and I would say,
Mhm.
on a scale of 1 to 10, how stressful is your job? And everyone would be like, 11, and I would try and explain to them the following. It's a problem to label your job as intensely stressful at an 11, at a 10, at a 9. Versions of that being, I hate my boss. Oh, this company is horrific. I hate going to work. Work is torture. We all say those things to ourselves. I mean, I don't anymore because I've learned the lesson. But I try not to. But also, we've all done it. We've
Mhm.
all had those days. Here's the problem with doing it. Here's what that does. When you paint with an entire swath your job in that way, your boss is terrible, the company sucks, you hate going to work. What that means is that you are priming yourself to experience every moment as difficult and to be on alert for those horrors at any given moment. So there's no respite. In other words, there are no good moments at work because you're like, oh, you're still in that horrible company with a horrible boss and a job that you hate. And so you are compounding unnecessarily the stress you feel because there is no job that is horrific and stressful from morning to night, 6, 7 days a week, whatever it is. There's not. There's got to be a meeting in there that's just okay. There's got to be half an hour for lunch where, you can just eat. There's got to be one person that's not terrible to hang out with. And if you paint it as like everyone sucks, the whole thing's terrible, then you can't get the breaks from the stress. But if you are more nuanced and accurate, because again,
Mhm.
our unconscious mind will rebuff something it believes, my job is great. Well, no, that's not going to work either. But if you're like, I have 2 hours with my boss today, which I am not looking forward to because that's going to be a pain, but I have 4 in which he's not going to be around, so that's not too bad. Or I have time for 30 minutes of lunch today. I'm going to prepare my favorite meal and really enjoy it. I'm going to go sit in the park and have a break from the craziness for 30 minutes. That I'll look forward to. Oh, that client is coming in. I actually like them. They're quite pleasant. There's one meeting I can actually look forward to. That's accurate, but
Mhm.
it's nuanced and it gives your mind and your body permission to not be, standing on the crow's nest looking for icebergs all the time.
Nuance, right?
Nuance,
And this,
accuracy.
yeah, accuracy, and this is where our words create realities. You know,
Absolutely. And that
Mhm.
with stress, that's the whole story, is our words
Mhm.
create reality.
How about what we commonly see with the individual who like stress is like that badge of courage? Like, it's almost like becomes part of the identity, and it's something that for many, not being stressed feels uncomfortable, even though being stressed is uncomfortable, but it's a different kind of uncomfortable. What do you say to people who have just sort of adopted it and almost like own stress as a companion?
The no pain, no gain, embrace the suck kind of philosophy.
Mhm.
Look, embrace the stress you have. Don't
The real
embrace
stuff.
the stress you
Yeah.
don't.
Right.
In other words, if you can embrace the stress, do. Say to yourself, there are some wicked moments there, and, you know, it's part of the deal. I'm ready for it. I accept it. I can even, feel good that I went through it. Now be balanced and say, there are also moments that are actually not that stressful, and I'm trying to learn to enjoy those too in a different way. In other words, it can't be stressful and hard and tough all the time. It's just not. I say in the book, I work with firemen, with firefighters, sorry, quite a bit. And I would always ask them, and some of them were like fighting fires quite regularly, some of them less so. But I would ask them, like, how stressful is your job? And they would all say the same thing. Job is not that stressful. Fighting fires is stressful. But we don't do that all the time. And others would say to me, like, the most stressful part of my job is when it's my turn to cook. I always get complaints. People hate my cooking. It's the rotation there. Those are the days that I dread going to work. It's an interesting insight, right? Because they're putting their lives on the line. These are the people who rush into burning buildings, but it's the cooking that's stressing them out. As are the burning buildings, but that's not how they define their job. That happens, obviously, but that's not what they do all of the time. Sometimes even most of the time, and they are nuanced in a very healthy way.
Nuance. Okay, another nuance, which is not, well, it's nuanced and it's not so nuanced. So,
Okay.
One of the interesting things you said in probably, I think it was probably the most recent TED Talk, which is before COVID, was the increase in telecommuting and how much that is changing people's experience of work and life and work-life balance and the lack thereof. And then we have COVID, where it's to a whole nother level, right, of telecommuting. And so this is a critical part of what you talk about in terms of how do we create barriers when there are not the barriers that used to be there.
That was an interesting thing, actually, because that TED Talk came out literally, I think, something like 3 months before the shutdowns. And I had a line there, in the future, more and more of us will be working from home.
Oh, an oracle.
Well, I think I even said, like, up to 10%, which is where I was. But then 3 months later, it was all of us. And look, it's actually when you do work from home, and I don't care if it's a day a week, or full time, you have to create psychological boundaries where they're not physical ones. And there are ways you can do that. You want to create a defined workspace. I don't care how small your apartment is. Have within it space that is not workspace. Don't sprawl out on the kitchen table, then on the bed, then on the couch. Like, have one space that you associate with work, because you want to leave that space when you stop working. Try not to have that space be the bed, because you want to associate the bed with sleeping or other activities, and not necessarily with work, because then it will be hard to not think about work when you're in bed, right? At the end of the day, create a very clear shift between the end of the workday and the start of your personal time, the evening. So it's not just about closing your laptop if you're working from home. Change clothes. People say to me, I wear jeans and a t-shirt. I'm like, terrific. Well, have jeans and t-shirts you wear when you're working, and have other jeans and t-shirts that are clearly distinct that you wear when you're not. Have clothes you define as my home clothes, my relaxed clothes, my non-work clothes, because clothes are very embodied. As you know, like, there's a reason power suits are called power suits, not because the suits look powerful, because they make us feel powerful. There's a reason leisure wear is called leisure wear, not because it looks casual, because it makes us feel casual. It's supposed to. So use clothing to signal to yourself that, now I'm in home mode, in personal time, in leisure time, family time, whatever the thing is. Shift the lighting. Put on some different kinds of music. Do the things that really signal to you that now there's a shift. Now we're switching mindsets, we're switching energy levels, we're switching focus. And that will really help you create a psychological boundary around a place where there's not a physical one.
a comment and then a story. So the comment is, this makes me think of also what has changed so much with the new lifestyles, working at home for so many. That relates back to sleep hygiene, because we've always taught, right? Use your bed for sleeping. And what happened with so many kids and young adults, and maybe some older adults, but all of a sudden they're in bed working in their pajamas all day long, right? Like the barriers just completely out the door. And so I just wanted to tie that to what you're saying too, because sleep, of course, is part of the self care, is so important. And it's something else to consider when we're talking about working from home.
Yeah, in the pajamas in bed.
Right.
I mean, it's really bad.
Yeah.
And you're not going to be as productive when you're in your pajamas in bed, because that's not giving you the feeling of, that's not the go get 'em feeling. Your boss is hoping you would bring to the table.
Hmm.
But it's also making it very difficult to distinguish
Hmm.
between work and non-work, and it'll make it difficult to sleep, and again, you're corrupting associations to the bed with potentially difficult ones. It's so, and I know it's like it takes effort to get out of bed. Why should I change clothes? When I suggest to people, sometimes they say, well, why should I do that? Why should I make the bed? Why should I change clothes? Why should I do the dishes? And I'll say to them sometimes, like, please take a stopwatch and time how long it takes you to make the bed. You have a duvet. You're basically pulling the thing over the bed. Time it. And then tell yourself, like, why should I take a minute and 3 seconds? Because it's a minute and 3 seconds, for goodness sakes, and it's important.
Hmm. Hmm. The story relates to what you said about, how what you wear is how you feel. My father would always tell the story. One of his years in college, he lived with his roommate was a good friend of his, and whenever his friend would study, he would put on a dress shirt and a tie, and that was his way of getting into study mode. And
Hmm.
this person ended up becoming a very successful business person.
Hmm.
And I think that tells us a little bit about
Yes,
his mindset and his ethic.
yes, yes, very much so. I tell people when they're looking for work from home, if they lost their job looking for work, like, put on a suit. Even as you're sending cover letters, resumes,
Mm,
put on, if that's what you wear to work,
mhm,
put
mhm,
on a suit. It puts you in a very different
mhm.
mindset. It energizes you in a very different way.
Yes, yes. I try in those earlier days of lockdown, and when we were all going telehealth, and people were all, business on top, casual on bottom. So,
Hmm.
I tried that a little bit working from home, and um, I didn't feel the same. I like literally, I didn't feel like I was locked into my job when I didn't feel as I normally did. Again, so
Hmm.
like these are again back to nuance, right? Was we're talking about, Guy, like back to nuance, that there's so many little things that matter, that I think we just takes these broad strokes and think that A is not connected to B. But so much of what you talk about and write about is being very conscious and very intentional and very purposeful about your emotional health and the things you can do to
Right.
maintain health and get yourself back to health when we're finding ourselves slipping.
Yeah, and another point to make there is that, yeah, battling ruminations is hard, but some of these are easy wins. It doesn't take that longer to put on slacks if that's what you're used to. It again, time it. It's a minute. You know, and so that's an easy win. Not working in your bed in pajamas is easy to do. That's not emotionally uncomfortable or laborious. It's just slightly effortful,
Mhm.
slightly and very slightly at that. Like, take the easy wins. There are small things that add up to a big impact. So don't get lazy on that.
Mhm. Yeah, the whole notion of 1% better. However we slice it, whatever, however we can make ourselves do something that is good for us. I remember back in the day, winter, needed to get on the treadmill. Just did not like running on the treadmill like I liked running outside, and it felt like a slug. And then I realized, okay, but I'm going to sit here and watch a sitcom for 30 minutes, but I can't get on the treadmill and even watch TV or watch a part of a game and do it. Like it's
Mm-hmm.
having these ways to the opposite of hijack, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or it's actually the hijacked thoughts, right? It's like this is trickery.
Like hijack back, like steal them back,
Yeah. How this is your fourth book.
Mm-hmm.
When does it become, you've been doing this a long time, and I know from writing, once you find something or there's been enough work that you want to write about it, you do a deep dive, you do a deeper dive on what you're doing. And I'm just curious, there's experiences in this book that go back, of course, decades of your life. And so
mine,
how did this book happen now?
This book happened now because I do think there's an urgency now in the workplace, and that things are getting bad, as we said, like burnout peaking, all of those things. I think the emotional health in the workplace is really gone down significantly and might go down further. But I really felt that this was a moment where people felt like, I can't change the culture at my company. I can't change how the workplace is writ large. And my feeling was, and you don't necessarily have to make a significant difference in your quality of life, in your quality of work, because there is the low-lying fruit of how you manage yourself that we're not really tapping into much, if not at all. And tapping into it can make a world of difference. So let's start there, because that's in your control. That you don't have to wait for the workplace to change, for the culture to change, for all the different styles and fads that are going on in the workplace to change. You can just take control and do it yourself, and it will benefit you both in the workplace and outside of it. So to me, there was a certain urgency I felt, because I just saw the direction where things were trending, and I'm looking around and I don't see the workplace getting better in the next few years. AI, uncertainty, mergers, acquisitions, the whole, state of the economy, climate change. There's a lot of reason to think that things will get more stressed and more pressured. So, let's get on it now in the ways it can. And I want to empower individual people to be able to feel like they can make a difference in their own lives without depending on other big moves, around them, because you don't necessarily have to. Do this first, and then maybe that's the what's next. But do this first. And for me, it's interesting because it's my fourth book. Every book was a little bit different. This one was different in the following ways. Number one, instead of just talking about issues, I cover 5 clients and tell their story throughout the book. We follow each of them throughout the book. It's through them that we get to the issues. So it's a very narrative arc that you have in the book. Parts of it read like fiction because you're following the stories of these people. And then I pause in the fiction to say, and so here's the issue, and this is what's going on, and this is the research, and this is what you need to do about it. And much of the time, it's not, this is what you need to do about it, but I'm actually in the work with the client. This is how I addressed it with them and what they did, so that you can actually get the illustration of how this plays out, how the problem plays out, and how the solution to it, what that looks like. So that was different for me, to kind of do that weaving of narrative with research, with the psychology, the interventions, and try and make it a cohesive kind of a story. And the other thing is, I brought a lot of myself in this book, and even a few things that got cut, much to my chagrin. Stories that I thought was like maybe just entertaining or interesting, but my editor was like, "This doesn't teach us anything." I'm like, "But it's a great example of something."
It's a great story.
Like, nope. So some stuff got cut out, and I'm like, I love that story. All right. And they're good stories. Maybe one day I'll have a supplemental material. Who knows? But there's a lot of me in there, as you said, experiences from formative days, and I've struggled with almost everything that I talk about in the book. You can't be in the workplace. You can't be an ambitious person. You can't be somebody with motivation and not. So I just felt it was always only fair to talk about, my side of things, and so that was different for me as well. So, I mean, it felt like, every book feels different. This book felt different for those reasons, but it was also very satisfying to write
Mm-hmm.
for
Mm-hmm.
those reasons.
And everyone, it's a story, right? Oh, stories. So like it's stories of these clients, and with you in there. I mean, it has everything. So it takes people along real life story. You're curious about each client. You're like up and you're down, and you're wanting to know how it's going to turn out. And then infused is the science,
Yeah,
the strategies, all the things to do about it. So you get to experience it through someone else.
yeah.
And I found in all of the books that are whether it's psychological principles, concepts, and or books about growth, seeing it through the eyes of an individual as opposed to just be talked to is a
Hmm.
completely different reader experience.
Yeah, good.
Yes.
I hoped it would be, and I'm glad to hear
Yes.
that.
Bravo. Bravo.
Oh, thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
So, Guy, as we're winding down, um, we're talking about real things. We're talking about real things going on in the workplace, real things going on in our the place and time that we are in, that we are not talking about a lot of them. There's just a lot of stuff going on. There's a lot of stress. There's a lot of things to be stressed about. Um, and the importance that you were talking about is for people to be able to take responsibility for what they can change and give them strategies to be able to make those changes and to improve their resilience. Not change necessarily their external reality, but
Right.
change their experience of living in their reality. Where's the place for them to start? Like, like the person who's just like, this is not working. It's hard to get out of bed. I just don't know much longer I can do this.
Look, there are many entry points because because I think, I mean, part of covering all these different aspects of our lives and in and outside of work is you can enter where it's most relevant for you. But here's one general principle that runs through a lot of the chapters in the book, and is one thing to keep in mind. If you're feeling like that about work, if you're feeling tired, if you're feeling overwhelmed, if you're feeling downtrodden, then what's really important is to be able to recover in the off hours, to be able to reconnect to your life, your personal life, to the stuff that life is actually about in the off hours. And there's one critical thing that needs to happen before you can, whether that's in the evening, on the weekend, when you're on holiday. That is, you have to first mentally detach from work. So start by focusing on detaching mentally from work. I said earlier, if you're still thinking about work, you're still at work.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not just not thinking about work, it's mentally detaching. It's inhabiting the different aspect of your life that the evening, the weekend should be about. Start focusing on that. That takes practice too, but make it a goal. Make it something you're very mindful about. Don't just get home and be. Get home and detach. Change your clothes. Listen to music. Shift the mindset. Focus in on what you're doing. I'll give you one other suggestion. In my calendar, if I have an obligation in the evening, it'll say what it is. It's a dinner here, it's an event there. If there's nothing, they're free evenings. I hope everyone has some. It used to be blank. If it's blank, it'll now say the following: rest and recharge.
Hmm.
It's a reminder that I have in my calendar. Like, you have a job, you have a duty, there's a goal for this evening. It's to rest and recharge, both of them. So you're resting, how are you recharging? That reminder again, because that means detach from work. Do the thing
Mm-hmm.
that's you. Um, and our brain takes calendars seriously, actually. Kind of one of the interesting things. When the brain sees it on the calendar, it's like, I guess I have to do it now. So it's useful.
I like that. I like that a lot. Um, Yeah, I was back in the day talking to the same psychologist and talking about how I just I don't have time for lunch. I'm seeing clients. I have all this work and I don't have time for my runs, and I need my runs for my mental and spiritual and physical health. And he just said, Dan, I want you to put lunch every day in your calendar, and I want you to put running in the mornings that you run. And, that was 20 plus years, a long time ago.
I would have said something similar in a slightly different way. I would have said to you, your language isn't correct. It's not, I don't have time for lunch. I don't have time to run. It's, I don't make time.
Yes.
For lunch. I don't make time to run. Because when you think of it that way, it's like, well, that's you. So
exactly.
Make it.
Exactly. All right, everyone, get that in your calendar, right? Get that in your calendar. Rest and recharge. Guy, thank you. Thank you for sharing your wisdom, your experience, and the passion by which you do.
Thank you so much. This has been a really, really fun conversation. Thank you.
Tell everyone where to find your book, your stuff, and everything you're doing.
The book is in hardcover, ebook, and audiobook. I do the reading. And you can find it wherever you get books. You can find it in your independent local bookstore, in your online bookstore. It should be everywhere. Mind over grind. It should be everywhere. And you can find links to those places on my website, guywinch.com. That's GUYWINCH.com. You'll have links to my social media, to other kinds of articles, to talks, and to other resources. So check it out.
And the TED Talks are right there, front and center.
TED Talks are right there.
Yeah, I strongly recommend everyone watch and listen. Guy brings us useful, direct, and actionable life skills that we all need to manage and cultivate our emotional health in a time where many of us are experiencing work stress, environmental stress, and extraneous stress from what's happening in the world today. Here are 5 key takeaways for cultivation. Number 1, burnout numbs your emotional data. When you're burned out, you can't accurately assess your career, your purpose, or your competence. Recover must come first. Number 2, rumination is unpaid emotional overtime. Replaying stressful moments doesn't solve anything. It drains your body, hijacks your sleep, and quietly erodes your health. Number 3, emotional health is preventative care. Skills like detaching from work, reframing stress, and managing rumination protect us before anxiety or depression become clinical. Number 4, stress is shaped by how we label it. When we define our entire job as toxic or unbearable, we eliminate recovery moments and amplify physiological stress. And number 5, small intentional shifts create real change. Changing clothes after work, creating psychological boundaries, or scheduling rest and recharge can radically improve resilience. There is so much in this conversation for us to internalize and to take away, bite-sized suggestions that we can put into practice today. We are interested in what you think about this episode, so please feel free to leave us a comment at Dr. Dan Peters on Instagram or reply to any of our social posts. Please share this episode with everyone and anyone you think will benefit. So many of us need to hear this information that Guy is sharing and writing about. Thank you for being a part of our community, for your 5-star reviews, and bringing other amazing individuals to us. We have this moment, this day, and this life. Let's make it a great one. This has been a Peters and Rossi production. Make It a Great One with Dr. Dan is produced by Laura Rossi. Our engineer is Phil Rossi. Theme music is Uplifting Folk by Awesome Music. Artwork by Kelly Dwyer. Follow us on social media at Dr. Dan Peters. For more information, visit drdanpeters.com.